On Thanksgiving, my uncle blocked the door and said, "You're not family anymore." My mom laughed and gave my seat to my sister's boyfriend. 5 minutes later, half the table walked out. My name is Alex. I'm 27 and for as long as I can remember, I was always the extra chair at every family holiday. You know the kind of person I am talking about, the one nobody really saves a seat for, the one who gets whatever is left, when everyone else has already filled their plates. Thanksgiving was supposed to be the one day of the year where families came together, where we could all sit around a table and pretend that things were perfect even if they were not. For me, that day was never about big speeches or traditions. It was about hoping that maybe for a few hours, I could blend in and not feel like the outsider I had always been made out to be. I would bring something decent to contribute, usually a pie or a side dish, sit quietly, smile at the right times, and pretend I belonged. But this year, everything changed. It was not hidden anymore. I drove 2 hours to get to my aunt's house, the smell of pumpkin pie filling my car because I had placed it on my lap, strapping the seat belt across it so it wouldn't slide. I remember thinking that morning about the message my aunt had sent me. She told me to make sure I was on time because seats were tight this year. I should have known right then that something was wrong. But I brushed it off because I wanted so badly to believe I still had a place at that table. When I finally pulled up, the driveway was packed with cars. I carried the pie carefully, balancing it in my hands as I walked up the path, crunching through dry autumn leaves that had gathered on the ground. I was nervous but trying not to show it. Then I reached the door, and that was where it happened. My uncle stepped forward, arms spread wide across the frame like a bouncer outside a club. He looked straight at me without a hint of a smile. His voice was low but firm when he said the words that cut deeper than anything I had heard before. "You're not family anymore. Leave." First, I thought he was joking. I tried to laugh, tried to see if there was a hint of humor in his eyes, but there was nothing. Then I looked past him and saw my mother standing there, 2 wine glasses in her hands, laughing as if nothing in the world could ever touch her. Except she did see me. She saw everything. She met my eyes, smirked, and then turned her back on me. In that same moment, she handed my literal seat, my place at the table, to my sister's boyfriend. That was it. That was my spot. Gone just like that. I did not argue. I did not beg. I did not even raise my voice. I simply nodded once, holding that pumpkin pie in my hands, and walked back to my car without another word. I placed the pie gently on the passenger seat, started the engine, and sat there for a moment letting the reality sink in. For years, I had been treated as the outsider, but this was different. This was final. It felt like they had slammed a door that could never be reopened. And then I did something I had been waiting to do for months. I reached for my phone, opened the drafted message I had been carefully building, and finally pressed send. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced back through the rearview mirror. I could see the dining room window, chairs scraping, voices rising, and then one by one, half the table stood up and walked out. My grandma, my cousins, even one of my aunts. I did not smile, not yet, but for the first time in years, I did not feel small. See, that message I sent was not some over-the-top family secret or explosive affair. It was something far simpler and far more powerful. It was just the truth, stripped down, raw, and undeniable. For months, I had been quietly collecting screenshots, texts, and receipts. Little things they never thought I would keep. Times my sister borrowed money and never paid me back. Texts from my mom where she said she wished she had just one child worth being proud of. The group chat where they laughed about sticking me at the kids' table last year. Even my uncle calling me a charity case after I got laid off for 3 months. I did not edit anything. I did not twist their words or add anything that wasn't real. I compiled every piece into one long, brutal document. A link timestamped with their own words exposed for what they really were. And instead of sending it to them directly, I sent it to the people who still actually cared. My cousins, a couple of my aunts, even my grandma who had always suspected something was wrong but never had proof. It did not take long. By the time I hit the highway, my phone was already buzzing. One cousin texted, "This is disgusting. I'm done with them." Another sent just 2 words, "Thank you." That was when I realized who I had seen walking out in the window. My grandma's silver hair shining under the light as she grabbed her coat. My cousins scooping up their kids. Even one aunt shaking her head in disbelief. Meanwhile, I could picture exactly what was happening inside that house. My mom claiming I twisted everything, my sister fake crying about how I had ruined her day, and my uncle screaming about betrayal. But here's the thing. I did not ruin anything. They did. I just stopped covering for them. And sitting alone in my car with that pumpkin pie still untouched beside me, I finally realized something. I hadn't lost my family that night. I had simply found out who actually was my family all along. By the time I finally reached my apartment, the sun had already set, and the streets outside were quiet, lit only by the soft glow of streetlights. I carried the pumpkin pie inside, set it on the kitchen counter, and just stood there for a while, letting the silence wash over me. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Dozens of missed calls, voicemails piling up one after another. I did not even have to check to know who they were from. My mother hated being exposed more than she hated being wrong, and tonight I had given her something she could not control. Her own words, her own actions, staring back at her without any excuse left to hide behind. When I finally pressed play on the first voicemail, I could hear that familiar fake sweetness dripping from her voice. The kind of tone she used whenever outsiders were around, pretending everything was perfect. She said, "We need to talk. You're confused. You've made a mistake. You need to take that link down before it does any more damage." I could almost picture her sitting there, glass of wine in hand, trying to spin it like she always did. The second voicemail was my sister, and it was the complete opposite. Her voice was shrill, broken, screaming through the speaker. She accused me of being jealous, of trying to destroy her life, of humiliating her in front of her boyfriend. She made it sound like everything that happened was about her, as if me being shut out, as if me being told you're not family was just a side detail. I almost laughed because her anger was so transparent. She was not mad that I had lied. She was mad that I had finally told the truth. Then came the third voicemail. My uncle's voice roared with rage, and for a moment I had to hold the phone away from my ear because it felt like he was shouting right into my living room. He said I had betrayed the family, that airing dirty laundry was the worst sin of all, that what I had done could never be forgiven. The irony nearly made me laugh. This was the same man who hours earlier had slammed the door in my face and declared I wasn't family. Yet somehow I was the traitor. But the texts told a completely different story. One by one, my cousins messaged me separately, each of them thanking me for finally saying what they had all been too afraid to admit out loud. One cousin wrote, "I always thought I was the problem for feeling uncomfortable around them. Now I see it's not me. It's them." Another simply wrote, "Proud of you." My grandma's message nearly broke me. 4 simple words. "You did the right thing." Meanwhile, the family group chat, the one I had been kicked out of months ago, was exploding with chaos. Screenshots started flowing in from cousins who still had access. After half the table walked out, the entire house fell silent. My mom tried to brush it off, pouring more wine and pretending nothing had happened. But then my grandma stood up in front of everyone and said, "If this is how you treat your own child, I don't want a seat at this table either." That was the moment that broke them. Because if there was one person in that entire family they still respected, it was her. She had built the foundation they all stood on. And now she was siding with me. The rest of the night was chaos. People packed up food, children started crying, my sister threw a fit in the corner, and my uncle shouted at anyone who tried to leave. But the photos posted later told the truth. No smiling family pictures. No cozy Thanksgiving dinner shots. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't me driving home feeling excluded. This time, it was them left behind in their own mess. At midnight, I finally sat down, cut into the pumpkin pie I had brought, and ate a slice alone in my apartment. It was quiet, peaceful. My phone buzzed again with another voicemail from my mother, but I did not listen. Not yet. For the first time in years, I felt a calmness that could not be shaken. But I also knew this wasn't over. Families like mine never let go quietly. The next morning, I woke up to a different kind of silence. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of a storm waiting to hit. My phone buzzed every few minutes, notifications lighting up the screen. By noon, I finally gave in and checked. Over 80 new messages. The group chat had exploded overnight, and my cousins kept forwarding screenshots to me. My mother had turned into a broken record. We're a family. Family forgives. This will ruin us if it gets out. You're tearing us apart. My sister was busy playing the victim, claiming she was being bullied because people walked out after reading my message. My uncle was pushing everyone to cut me off completely, pretending as if they hadn't already done that 100 times before. But here's the truth. The damage wasn't mine to carry anymore. It was theirs. They were the ones who had mocked me, pushed me aside, treated me like a ghost. All I did was hold up a mirror and make them look at themselves. The more they screamed about me, the more obvious it became that I wasn't the cause of the split. They were. Around 3 o'clock, I finally got the call I had been waiting for. It wasn't my mom. It was my grandma. Her voice was calm, steady, but heavy with tiredness. She said, "They've been calling me all day, saying you destroyed Thanksgiving. But I want you to know something, you didn't destroy anything. You just stopped pretending." Those words stuck with me. Stopped pretending. For years, I had laughed at jokes made at my expense, swallowed insults, let myself be pushed to the sidelines because it was easier than speaking up. They counted on that silence. They counted on me always playing along. But this year I stopped. And in that choice, I finally took back my power. That evening, I finally listened to one more voicemail from my mother. Her voice cracked between rage and desperation. In one message, she said I was dead to her if I didn't delete the document. 2 minutes later, in another, she begged me to fix things because the family was falling apart. It was like watching her mask slip over and over again, switching between anger and fear. I didn't respond. Not once. Instead, I sent one final message to the same group I had messaged on Thanksgiving. I didn't ruin Thanksgiving. I just told the truth. If the truth makes you leave the table, that's not my burden anymore. Then I muted every number tied to my mom, my sister, and my uncle. The relief that washed over me was instant. Over the next week, I watched from a distance as the family fractured. Some clung desperately to my mother, pretending nothing was wrong. But others, my cousins, a few aunts, even my grandma, reached out to me quietly. They wanted to start hosting gatherings without the toxicity. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider. I was simply around people who valued me for who I was, not for what they could mock or take from me. Then came the ironic twist. My sister's boyfriend, the same man who had taken my seat that night, messaged me a week later. His words were simple. "I didn't realize what they were doing to you until I saw it myself. I'm sorry." I read the message once, nodded to myself, and then deleted it without replying. Some things don't deserve closure. So, no, I wasn't at the Thanksgiving table this year. I wasn't welcome. But for the first time in my life, I also wasn't sitting in silence, swallowing bitterness, pretending to belong where I didn't. Instead, I finally had something better. A seat at my own table. A table where I mattered, where the people around me respected me, where my existence wasn't a joke. And the best part? For once, it wasn't me left outside looking in. It was them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It always amazes me how far these stories reach.